Section 13, Parts 71 through 76 of The Painted Veil by Somerset Maugham. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. Part 71. When the boat docked at Hong Kong, Kitty, who had been standing on the deck to look at the colored, gay, and vivacious traffic of the river, went into her cabin to see that the ama had left nothing behind. She gave herself a look in the glass. She wore black. The nuns had dyed a dress for her, but not mourning, and the thought crossed her mind that the first thing she must do was to see to this. The habiliments of woe could not but serve as an effective disguise to her unexpected feelings. There was a knock on her cabin door. The ama opened it. "Mrs. Fane." Kitty turned and saw a face which at the first moment she did not recognize. Then her heart gave a sudden quick beat, and she flushed. It was Dorothy Townsend. Kitty so little expected to see her that she knew neither what to do nor what to say. But Mrs. Townsend came into the cabin and with an impulsive gesture took Kitty in her arms. "Oh, my dear, I'm so dreadfully sorry for you." Kitty allowed herself to be kissed. Kitty was a little surprised at this effusiveness in a woman whom she had always thought cold and distant. "It's very kind of you," murmured Kitty. "Come on deck. The ama will look after your things, and my boys are here." She took Kitty's hand, and Kitty, allowing herself to be led, noticed that her good-natured, weather-beaten face bore an expression of real concern. "Your boat's early. I very nearly didn't get down in time," said Mrs. Townsend. "I couldn't have borne it if I missed you." "But you didn't come to meet me," exclaimed Kitty. "Of course I did. But how did you know I was coming?" "Mr. Waddington sent me a telegram." Kitty turned away. She had a lump in her throat. It was funny that a little unexpected kindness should so affect her. She did not want to cry. She wished Dorothy Townsend would go away. But Dorothy took the hand that was hanging by Kitty's side and pressed it. It embarrassed Kitty that this shy woman should be so demonstrative. "I want you to do me a great favor. Charlie and I want you to come and stay with us while you're in Hong Kong." Kitty snatched her hand away. "It's awfully kind of you. I couldn't possibly." "But you must. You can't go and live all by yourself in your own house. It would be dreadful for you. I've prepared everything. You shall have your own sitting room. You can have your meals there if you don't care to have them with us. We both want you to come." "I wasn't thinking of going to the house. I was going to get myself a room at the Hong Kong hotel. I couldn't possibly put you to so much trouble." The suggestion had taken her by surprise. She was confused and vexed. If Charlie had had any sense of decency, he would never have allowed his wife to make the invitation. She did not wish to be under an obligation to either of them. "Oh, but I couldn't bear the idea of your living at a hotel. And you'd hate the Hong Kong hotel just now, with all those people about and the band playing jazz all the time. Please say you'll come to us. I promise you that Charlie and I won't bother you." "I don't know why you should be so kind to me." Kitty was getting a little short of excuses. She could not bring herself to utter a blunt and definite no. "I'm afraid I'm not very good company among strangers just now." "But need we be strangers to you?" "Oh, I do so want not to be. I so want you to allow me to be your friend." Dorothy clasped her hands, and her voice, her cool, deliberate, and distinguished voice, was tremulous with tears. "I so awfully want you to come. You see, I want to make amends to you." Kitty did not understand. She did not know what amends Charlie's wife owed her. "I'm afraid I didn't very much like you at first. I thought you rather fast. You see, I'm old-fashioned, and I suppose I'm intolerant." Kitty gave her a passing glance. What she meant was that at first she had thought Kitty vulgar. Though Kitty allowed no shadow of it to show on her face, in her heart she laughed. Much she cared for what anyone thought of her now. And when I heard that you'd gone with your husband into the jaws of death without a moment's hesitation, I felt such a frightful cad. I felt so humiliated. You've been so wonderful. You've been so brave. You've made all the rest of us look so dreadfully cheap and second-rate." Now the tears were pouring down her kind, homely face. "I can't tell you how much I admire you and what a respect I have for you. I know I can do nothing to make up for your terrible loss, but I want you to know how deeply, how sincerely I feel for you. And if you'll only allow me to do a little something for you, it would be a privilege. Don't bear me a grudge because I misjudged you. You're heroic, and I'm just a silly fool of a woman." Kitty looked down at the deck. She was very pale. She wished that Dorothy would not show such uncontrollable emotion. She was touched, it was true, but she could not help a slight feeling of impatience that this simple creature should believe such lies. "If you really mean that you would like to have me, of course I shall be glad to come," she sighed. Part 72. The Townsends lived on the peak in a house with a wide view over the sea, and Charlie did not as a rule come up to luncheon. But on the day of Kitty's arrival, Dorothy, they were Kitty and Dorothy to one another by now, told her that if she felt up to seeing him, he would like to come and bid her welcome. Kitty reflected that since she must see him, she might as well see him at once, and she looked forward with grim amusement to the embarrassment she must cause him. She saw very well that the invitation to stay had arisen in his wife's fancy, and notwithstanding his own feelings, he had immediately approved. Kitty knew how great his desire was always to do the right thing, and to offer her a gracious hospitality was obviously very much the right thing. But he could hardly remember that last interview of theirs without mortification. To a man so vain as Townsend, it must be galling like an ulcer that would not heal. She hoped that she had hurt him as much as he had hurt her. He must hate her now. She was glad to think that she did not hate but only despised him. It gave her a sardonic satisfaction to reflect that whatever his feelings, he would be obliged to make much of her. When she left his office that afternoon, he must have hoped with all his heart that he would never set eyes on her again. And now, sitting with Dorothy, she waited for him to come in. She was conscious of her delight in the sober luxury of the drawing-room. She sat in an armchair. There were lovely flowers here and there. On the walls were pleasing pictures. The room was shaded and cool. It was friendly and homelike. She remembered with a faint shudder the bare and empty parlor of the missionary's bungalow, the rattan chairs and the kitchen table with its cotton cloth, the stained shelves with all those cheap editions of novels, and the little skimpy red curtains that had such a dusty look. Oh, it had been so uncomfortable. She supposed that Dorothy had never thought of that. They heard a motor drive up, and Charlie strove into the room. "Am I late? I hope I haven't kept you waiting. I had to see the governor, and I simply couldn't get away." He went up to Kitty and took both her hands. "I'm so very, very glad you've come here. I know Dorothy has told you that we want you to stay as long as ever you like, and that we want you to look upon our house as your home. But I want to tell you so myself as well. If there's anything in the world I can do for you, I shall only be too happy." His eyes wore a charming expression of sincerity. She wondered if he saw the irony in hers. "I'm awfully stupid at saying such things, and I don't want to seem a clumsy fool, but I do want you to know how deeply I sympathize with you in your husband's death. He was a thundering good chap, and he'll be missed here more than I can say." "Don't, Charlie," said his wife. "I'm sure Kitty understands. Here are the cocktails." Following the luxurious custom of the foreigners in China, 2 boys in uniform came into the room with savories and cocktails. Kitty refused. "Oh, you must have one," insisted Townsend in his breezy, cordial way. "It'll do you good, and I'm sure you haven't had such a thing as a cocktail since you left Hong Kong. Unless I'm very mistaken, you couldn't get ice in Mi Tan Fu." "You're not mistaken," said Kitty. For a moment she had a picture before her mind's eye of that beggar with the tousled head and the blue rags through which you saw the emaciated limbs, who had lain dead against the compound wall. Part 73. They went in to luncheon. Charlie, sitting at the head of his table, easily took charge of the conversation. After those first few words of sympathy, he treated Kitty not as though she had just suffered a devastating experience, but rather as though she had come in from Shanghai for a change after an operation for appendicitis. She needed cheering, and he was prepared to cheer her. The best way of making her feel at home was to treat her as one of the family. He was a tactful man. He began talking of the autumn race meeting and the polo. By Jove, he would have to give up playing polo if he couldn't get his weight down, and a chat he had had that morning with the governor. He spoke of a party they had been to on the Admiral's flagship, the state of affairs in Canton, and of the links at Lushan. In a few minutes Kitty felt that she might have been away for no longer than a weekend. It was incredible that over there, up country, 600 miles away, the distance from London to Edinburgh, wasn't it? Men, women, and children had been dying like flies. Soon she found herself asking about so-and-so who had broken a collarbone at polo, and if Mrs. This had gone home or Mrs. That was playing in the tennis tournament. Charlie made his little jokes, and she smiled at them. Dorothy, with her faint air of superiority, which now included Kitty, and so was no longer slightly offensive, but a bond of union rather, was gently ironic about various persons in the colony. Kitty began to feel more alert. "Why, she's looking better already," said Charlie to his wife. "She was so pale before tiffin that I was quite startled. She's really got some color in her cheeks now." But while she took her part in the conversation, if not with gaiety, for she felt that neither Dorothy nor Charlie, with his admirable sense of decorum, would approve of that, at least with cheerfulness, Kitty observed her host. In all those weeks during which her fancy had been revengefully occupied with him, she had built up in her mind a very vivid impression of him. His thick, curling hair was a little too long and too carefully brushed. In order to hide the fact that it was graying, there was too much oil on it. His face was too red with its network of mauve veins on the cheeks, and his jowl was too massive. When he did not hold his head up to hide it, you saw that he had a double chin, and there was something ape-like in those bushy, grizzled eyebrows of his that vaguely disgusted her. He was heavy in his movements, and all the care he took in his diet and all his exercise did not prevent him from being fat. His bones were much too well covered, and his joints had a middle-aged stiffness. His smart clothes were a little tight for him, and a little too young. But when he came into the drawing-room before luncheon, Kitty received quite a shock. This, perhaps, was why her pallor had been so marked, for she discovered that her imagination had played an odd trick on her. He did not in the least look as she had pictured him. She could hardly help laughing at herself. His hair was not gray at all. Oh, there were a few white hairs on the temple, but they were becoming. His face was not red, but sunburned. His head was very well placed on his neck, and he wasn't stout, and he wasn't old. In fact, he was almost slim, and his figure admirable. Could you blame him if he was a trifle vain of it? He might have been a young man. And of course he did know how to wear his clothes. It was absurd to deny that. He looked neat and clean and trim. Whatever could have possessed her to think him this and that? He was a very handsome man. It was lucky that she knew how worthless he was. Of course she had always admitted that his voice had a winning quality, and his voice was exactly as she remembered it. It made the falseness of every word he said more exasperating. Its richness of tone and its warmth rang now in her ears with insincerity, and she wondered how she could ever have been taken in by it. His eyes were beautiful. That was where his charm lay. They had such a soft blue brilliance, and even when he was talking balderdash, an expression which was so delightful, it was almost impossible not to be moved by them. At last the coffee was brought in, and Charlie lit his cheroot. He looked at his watch and rose from the table. "Well, I must leave you two young women to your own devices. It's time for me to get back to the office." He paused, and then with his friendly, charming eyes on Kitty, said to her, "I'm not going to bother you for a day or two till you're rested, but then I want to have a little business talk with you." "With me?" "We must make arrangements about your house, you know, and then there's the furniture." "Oh, but I can go to a lawyer. There's no reason why I should bother you about that." "Don't think for a moment I'm going to let you waste your money on legal expenses. I'm going to see to everything. You know you're entitled to a pension. I'm going to talk to H.E. about it and see if by making representations in the proper quarter we can't get something extra for you. You put yourself in our hands. But don't bother about anything just yet. All we want to do now is to get fit and well. Isn't that right, Dorothy?" "Of course." He gave Kitty a little nod, and then passing by his wife's chair, took her hand and kissed it. Most Englishmen look a little foolish when they kiss a woman's hand. He did it with a graceful ease. Part 74. It was not till Kitty was fairly settled at the Townsends' that she discovered that she was weary. The comfort and the unaccustomed amenity of this life broke up the strain under which she had been living. She had forgotten how pleasant it was to take one's ease, how lulling to be surrounded by pretty things, and how agreeable it was to receive attention. She sank back with a sigh of relief into the facile existence of the luxurious East. It was not displeasing to feel that in a discreet and well-bred fashion she was an object of sympathetic interest. Her bereavement was so recent that it was impossible for entertainments to be given for her, but ladies of convenience in the colony, His Excellency's wife, the wives of the Admiral and of the Chief Justice, came to drink a quick cup of tea with her. His Excellency's wife said that His Excellency was most anxious to see her, and if she would come very quietly to luncheon at Government House, not a party, of course, only ourselves and the A.D.C.'s, it would be very nice. These ladies used Kitty as though she were a piece of porcelain, which was as fragile as it was precious. She could not fail to see that they looked upon her as a little heroine, and she had sufficient humor to play the part with modesty and discretion. She wished sometimes that Waddington were there. With his malicious shrewdness he would have seen the fun of the situation, and when alone they might have a good laugh over it together. Dorothy had a letter from him, and he had said all manner of things about her devoted work at the convent, about her courage and her self-control. Of course, he was skillfully pulling their legs. The dirty dog. Part 75. Kitty did not know whether it was by chance or by design that she never found herself for a moment alone with Charlie. His tact was exquisite. He remained kindly, sympathetic, pleasant, and amiable. No one could have guessed that they had ever been more than acquaintances. But one afternoon, when she was lying on a sofa outside her room reading, he passed along the veranda and stopped. "What's that you're reading?" he asked. "A book." She looked at him with irony. He smiled. "Dorothy's gone to a garden party at Government House." "I know. Why haven't you gone too?" "I didn't feel I could face it, and I thought I'd come back and keep you company. The car's outside. Would you like to come for a drive around the island?" "No, thank you." He sat down on the foot of the sofa on which she lay. "We haven't had a chance to talk by ourselves since you got here." She looked straight into his eyes with cool insolence. "Do you think we have anything to say to one another?" "Volumes." She shifted her feet so that she should not touch him. "Are you still angry with me?" he asked, the shadow of a smile on his lips and his eyes melting. "Not a bit," she laughed. "I don't think you'd laugh if you weren't. You're mistaken. I despise you too much to be angry with you." He was unruffled. "I think you're rather hard on me. Looking back calmly, don't you honestly think I was right?" "From your standpoint." "Now that you know Dorothy, you must admit she's rather nice." "Of course. I shall always be grateful for her great kindness to me." "She's 1 in 1,000. I should never have had a moment's peace if we'd bolted. It would have been a rotten trick to play on her, and after all, I had to think of my children. It would have been an awful handicap for them." For a minute she held him in her reflective gaze. She felt completely mistress of the situation. "I've watched you very carefully during the week I've been here. I've come to the conclusion that you really are fond of Dorothy. I should never have thought you capable of it." "I told you I was fond of her. I wouldn't do anything to cause her a moment's uneasiness. She's the best wife a man ever had." "Have you ever thought that you owed her any loyalty?" "What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve for," he smiled. She shrugged her shoulders. "You're despicable." "I'm human. I don't know why you should think me such a cad because I fell head over ears in love with you. I didn't particularly want to, you know." It gave her a little twist of the heartstrings to hear him say that. "I was fair game," she answered bitterly. "Naturally, I couldn't foresee that we were going to get into such a devil of a scrape. And in any case, you had a pretty shrewd idea that if anyone suffered, it wouldn't be you." "I think that's a bit thick. After all, now it's all over, you must see I acted for the best of both of us. You lost your head, and you ought to be jolly glad that I kept mine. Do you think it would have been a success if I'd done what you wanted me to? We were dashed uncomfortable in the frying pan, but we should have been a damn sight worse off in the fire. And you haven't come to any harm. Why can't we kiss and make friends?" She almost laughed. "You can hardly expect me to forget that you sent me to almost certain death without a shadow of compunction." "Oh, what nonsense! I told you there was no risk if you took reasonable precautions. Do you think I'd have let you go for a moment if I hadn't been perfectly convinced of that?" "You were convinced because you wanted to be. You're one of those cowards who only think what it's profitable for them to think." "Well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You have come back, and if you don't mind my saying anything so objectionable, you've come back prettier than ever." "And Walter?" He could not resist the facetious answer which came to his mind. Charlie smiled. "Nothing suits you so well as black." She stared at him for a moment. Tears filled her eyes, and she began to cry. Her beautiful face was distorted with grief. She did not seek to hide it, but lay on her back with her hands along her sides. "For God's sakes, don't cry like that. I didn't mean to say anything unkind. It was only a joke. You know how sincerely I feel for you in your bereavement." "Oh, hold your stupid tongue." "I'd give anything to have Walter back again." "He died because of you and me." He took her hand, but she snatched it away from him. "Please go away," she sobbed. "That's the only thing you can do for me now. I hate and despise you. Walter was worth 10 of you, and I was too big a fool to see it. Go away. Go away." She saw he was going to speak again, and she sprang to her feet and went into her room. He followed her, and as he entered, with instinctive prudence, drew the shutter so that they were almost in darkness. "I can't leave you like this," he said, putting his arms around her. "You know I didn't mean to hurt you." "Don't touch me. For God's sake, go. Go away." She tried to tear herself from him, but he would not let her. She was crying hysterically now. "Darling, don't you know that I've always loved you?" he said in his deep, charming voice. "I love you more than ever." "How can you tell such lies? Let me go. Damn you, let me go." "Don't be unkind to me, Kitty. I know I've been a brute to you, but forgive me." She was shaking and sobbing, struggling to get away from him, but the pressure of his arms was strangely comforting. She had so longed to feel them round her once more, just once, and all her body trembled. She felt dreadfully weak. It seemed as though her bones were melting, and the sorrow she felt for Walter shifted into pity for herself. "Oh, how could you be so unkind to me?" she sobbed. "Don't you know that I loved you with all my heart? No one has ever loved you as I loved you. Darling," he began to kiss her. "No, no," she cried. He sought her face, but she turned it away. He sought her lips. She did not know what he was saying, broken, passionate words of love, and his arms held her so firmly that she felt like a child that had been lost and now at last is safe at home. She moaned faintly. Her eyes were closed and her face was wet with tears. And then he found her lips, and the pressure of his upon them shot through her body like the flame of God. It was an ecstasy, and he was burnt to a cinder, and she glowed as though she were transfigured. In her dreams, she had known this rapture. What was he doing with her now? She did not know. She was not a woman. Her personality was dissolved. She was nothing but desire. He lifted her off her feet. She was very light in his arms. He carried her, and she clung to him, desperate and adoring. Her head sank on the pillow, and his lips clung to hers. Part 76. She sat on the edge of the bed, hiding her face with her hands. "Would you like a drop of water?" She shook her head. He went over the washing stand, filled the tooth glass, and brought it to her. "Come along, have a little drink, and you'll feel better." He put the glass to her lips, and she sipped the water. Then, with horrified eyes, she stared at him. He was standing over her, looking down, and in his eyes was a twinkle of self-satisfaction. "Well, do you think I'm such a dirty dog as you did?" he asked. She looked down. "Yes, but I know I'm not a bit better than you." "Oh, I'm so ashamed." "Well, I think you're very ungrateful." "Will you go now?" "To tell you the truth, I think it's about time. I'll just go and tidy up before Dorothy comes in." He went out of the room with a jaunty step. Kitty sat for a while, still on the edge of the bed, hunched up like an imbecile. Her mind was vacant. A shudder passed through her. She staggered to her feet, and going to the dressing table, sank into a chair. She stared at herself in the glass. Her eyes were swollen with tears. Her face was stained, and there was a red mark on one cheek where his had rested. She looked at herself with horror. It was the same face. She had expected in it she knew not what change of degradation. "Swine!" She swung at her reflection. "Swine!" Then, letting her face fall on her arms, she wept bitterly. Shame! Shame! She did not know what had come over her. It was horrible. She hated him, and she hated herself. It had been ecstasy. Oh, hateful! She could never look him in the face again. He was so justified. He had been right not to marry her, for she was worthless. She was no better than a harlot. Oh, worse, for those poor women gave themselves for bread. And in this house, too, into which Dorothy had taken her in her sorrow and cruel desolation. Her shoulders shook with her sobs. Everything was gone now. She had thought herself changed. She had thought herself strong. She thought she had returned to Hong Kong a woman who possessed herself. New ideas flittered about her heart like little yellow butterflies in the sunshine, and she had hoped to be so much better in the future. Freedom, like a spirit of light, had beckoned her on, and the world was like a spacious plain through which she could walk light of foot with head erect. She had thought herself free from lust and vile passions, free to live the clean and healthy life of the spirit. She had likened herself to the white egrets that fly with leisurely flight across the rice fields at dusk, and they are like the soaring thoughts of a mind at rest with itself. And she was a slave, weak, weak. It was hopeless. It was no good to try. She was a slut. She would not go in to dinner. She sent the boy to tell Dorothy that she had a headache and preferred to remain in her room. Dorothy came in, and seeing her red, swollen eyes, talked for a little in her gentle, commiserating way of trivial things. Kitty knew that Dorothy thought she had been crying on account of Walter, and sympathizing like the good and loving wife she was, respected the natural sorrow. "I know it's very hard, dear," she said as she left Kitty, "but you must try to have courage. I'm sure your dear husband wouldn't wish you to grieve for him." End of section 13.